Hi, welcome to Star Wars Timeline. The wait is finally over. Kenobi show has released. Happy Star Wars celebration, guys. I will discuss part 1 and 2 as my overall season premiere review. As always, this is going to be a full spoiler on discussion, so guys, if you haven't watched it yet, I strongly encourage you go watch it first, then come back. Let's have a discussion. Drop your comments in the video section below. Let me know which parts you agree or disagree with. First, let me give you just the general gist of it. What are the general positives and the general negatives of the show? So, Deborah Chow had quite a tall order. She had to satisfy both the prequel fans and the original fans, because I believe that this show was a great promise, first and foremost, for the prequel fans, right? Ewan McGregor reprising the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi, with Hayden Christensen coming back to reprise his respective role as well. But also, it is that type of time period that also caters to a lot of fans like myself, who are from the 80s, who are the original Star Wars fans. And at 1 hour and 38 minutes, there is a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of positives. There's some things which I found negative. Guys, I mentioned before, for those of you who watch my channel, that I'm not going to sugarcoat my impression here. I'm just going to give you a full, honest review, and I'm also not going to trash on it too much. It is what it is. The show released, a lot of us are having fun with it. But anyway, let's get into it. So, generally, what I like about it is the production value. Everything looks absolutely phenomenal. It looks better than any other previous Star Wars live-action show. It looks like a full feature film. And based on the 2 episodes, it also feels like it's going to be one coherent vision that knows this exactly what it needs to accomplish. And we're not going to have these jumpy episodes like we did with Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, where certain characters were introduced and it kind of disrupted us a little bit. So I like that part. I like the visual quality. I like the production. I loved most of the acting. And of course, our main hero, Ewan McGregor, reprising Obi-Wan Kenobi. Every time he's on screen, he's magnificent. Now, the other aspect of it which I didn't like about it, my main concern was, how is the directing going to be in the show? How is it produced as a film? And I'm sad to say there was some wonky writing, some acting there that just didn't work for me. But I would say generally the positives far outweigh the negatives. Now let's get a little bit into detail so you guys get to understand what I felt about this season premiere, part 1 and part 2 in overall. So in the beginning, we're given this prequel recap. We're shown through the entire prequel trilogy, right, of Anakin's rise to the Jedihood and then falling and becoming Darth Vader. And immediately, of course, I get those prequel vibes because I saw those movies in theaters. I have a lot of memories regarding that. And then the real show starts. I personally didn't feel like that recap was necessary because pretty much everybody knows Star Wars. But I guess it was an added bonus for somebody who is coming into it fresh. Not everybody knows Star Wars as good as we do. So I kind of was forgiving. I said, okay, all right, this is just a recap. This is not the real deal yet. The real episode begins with a swinging action sequence. We're obviously shown the Order 66. We're shown the Jedi Temple in Coruscant, and a lot of things are happening there. And this female Jedi is trying to protect the younglings, and of course, she tragically is destroyed, and all the younglings are escaping. So right there from the beginning, I kind of loved that we're thrown in the thick of it, and the show is trusting us, the audience, to try to figure out what is happening. Because back in the day, when you watch the original Star Wars film, Episode 4, it almost begins at the end, right? And you sort of have to figure out, oh, so these are the rebels, these are the bad guys, and what is happening here, they're trying to destroy the ultimate weapon. You're at the most interesting part of the story towards its end. Same here, we're at the end of the Clone Wars, and then we skip forward 10 years. And this is where I had the first big problem with the show. The first opening story scene, as far as this show is concerned, is regarding the Inquisitors, right? We see Tatooine, we see the Inquisitors arrive, and they just parade in. They're just waltzing in, and they're posturing, and they're trying to intimidate the crowd. I just felt that the writing was very, very superficial, very surface level. Why would a Grand Inquisitor walk into the nearest first cantina? First of all, why would they automatically know why there is a Jedi on this planet? That is never alluded to. We're thrown in the thick of it, but there are Jedi all over the galaxy. Why Tatooine, of all the places? Just give us a little bit of understanding of that situation. And I just didn't understand how it merits for Inquisitors to explain themselves. You know what we do to people. You know, for people who disobey us and the Emperor, it was just too on the nose. It's. I was thrown back into my prequel era. I was like, oh man, I wish the writing was a little bit better. Like, I understand what they're trying to do. They're basically regurgitating it and making like very digestible for children. But for me as an adult, I personally look for a little bit more of a nuanced dialogue writing. And it kind of set the tone for me. None of the Inquisitors worked for episode 1 or episode 2. They just look cool. But everything that they do in the show is like, oh, okay, all right. Let's keep it moving. Let's see what else the show has to offer us. And now we get to the most important part, to the heart and soul of the show. We see Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the way that Ewan McGregor gets back into this role, he's back on the horse, it feels like a day has not skipped from the episode 3 to this show. It's instantly you recognize Obi-Wan Kenobi. Of course, a very different, a very broken Obi-Wan Kenobi, but nonetheless, same character we recognize from the clone period, and none of the Ewan McGregor is there, and that's wonderful. And also, what really amplified his performance to me, and I found absolutely captivating, was Joel Edgerton's acting as well as Owen Lars. Together, they have just such a strong, powerful energy, and it almost feels to me like their dialogue lines are written by completely different people, because there's gravitas there, there's energies there, there's that confrontational family relationship. Both of these individuals understand the legacy of Luke Skywalker, and they have different ideas and philosophies where his future needs to go. Everything there with Ewan McGregor, with Joel Edgerton, was absolutely fantastic. Right on the money. This is exactly what I was hoping for in the show. And we see this very outcast, broken, and hopeless Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's just like watching Luke from afar. He's working this meat factory. And the thing is, he's not even trying to look for that new hope. It's the character that he will become in the original trilogy. It's such a great deconstruction of Obi-Wan Kenobi's character, of who he needs to become throughout the show, in order for us to make that logical connection and say, aha, this is the hero he once becomes in the twilight of his years, and how he encourages Luke in the New Hope to become the Jedi, learn about the Force. Brilliantly done, brilliant reconstruction of the character. And then we skip to something which I gotta give kudos to the showrunners of Kenobi, and this is what my friend Josh from Star Wars on High has expressed in our exchange. We saw it together, actually, guys. I'll point to his channel in the video section below. You'll see a link to his channel. Josh and I, we had a wonderful time watching it together, and he said, dude, it's such a great surprise that we didn't see anything on Leia in the trailers, and now not only we get Leia, we get Alderaan, which looks and feels like Ralph McQuarrie's painting realized on full screen. It just looks gorgeous. It looks stunning. The visual quality of the show is top-notch. And Vivienne Lyra Blair, she embodies Leia. There's a little minor nitpicky things that you could tell, oh, you know, it's just a child. Sometimes she looks a little bit into the screen, or she like her acting thing. She's so young. She's like 9 or 10-year-old portraying a 10-year-old Leia, of course, but she was so in character. She's so charming. She has both characteristics of Padme and Anakin Skywalker. She's a little bit proud. She's very stubborn. She's very self-assured, but she's very kind and generous and giving and loving. And I absolutely adore her. She's wonderful. Again, to say that all the things concerned, the positives far outweigh the negatives in the show. And something else happened, which I was kind of incognito hoping for. I did not count on it to happen 100%. I was hoping for it. And Bail Organa becomes an integral part right from the first episode. And I know he's going to play a major part in Leia's formative years as her father, right? And it was so wonderful to see Jimmy Smits come back and reprise the role. I was just so happy to see him, just like I was happy to see him in Rogue One. And his exchange, his conversations with Leia, like, no. And he points to her heart. You are Organa in every sense of the word. I loved those moments. This is what I live for. This is where I think the new generation of Star Wars thrives, when you have these character-centric scenes and moments. And I just wish the rest of the show had the strength of that particular scene, or the scene that we see between Owen Lars and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I love that part as well. And guys, I'm gonna tell you something there. When I saw Bail Organa's wife, Bria, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the way that she mentors and being motherly to Leia, what I saw in that character is something that I always imagined as a kid. Because for me, as an 80s kid who grew with the original trilogies, the Luke and Leia's mom, she didn't die at birth because Leia has a clear recollection of her. That's just my interpretation because we had to live with the original trilogy for many years and take a stab at it and reinterpret the lines over and over and over again for 15 years before the prequels were even presented. And George Lucas kind of tossed those ideas around and he kind of embellished and fulfilled that part of the story in a different way, that she dies at childbirth. But for me, it's different. And when I saw Bria Organa being a mother to Leia, I'm like, oh my God, this is real Leia's mom. This is Luke's mom. This is the same woman that they remember, that Leia relates to him at the end of the Return of the Jedi. I mean, obviously, logically, I know that is not so, but it fulfilled that childhood connection, that fantasy that I had with Star Wars. It was just a beautiful moment, and I really liked it. And then, once again, the show surprised me in a very positive and good manner, because Leia's kidnapped. Oh my God, who would have thought? She's just a child. She's not ready for grand adventures. Just like Jake Lloyd and young Anakin Skywalker was not ready for his adventure. And he was thrown into the middle of it just because that's how things are destined to be. And she's kidnapped. And I felt that it was a great surprise, but also equally powerful reason for Obi-Wan Kenobi to leave Tatooine. And I was shocked, appalled. In the beginning, he tells Bail Organa, like, I can't do it. I'm not the man. I'm not what I used to be. You know that he's struggling with his inner demons. It was, once again, this is the kind of nuance that I loved in the show. And I just wish it was consistent throughout. Like the quality of scene to scene didn't jump all over like this. And this is what I mean for me personally. It felt a lot like prequels where there were a lot of wonky dialogues and scenes, but other parts were so powerful and so strong and beautiful. Anyway, Leia is kidnapped, and now we are going into part 2. I'm like, okay, I'm on board. Like my inner critic is like identifying things that I'm not on board with, but overall I am in there. I'm enjoying the ride so far. And now we get to part 2, where we are introduced to this new planet Dayu, which looks like basically a Blade Runner or futuristic Hong Kong. Or in the beginning, people even confuse it. Hey, is this going to be Coruscant? What is this place? Looks gorgeous, looks stunning, and I really enjoyed Obi-Wan Kenobi being the Ronin, this masterless samurai who doesn't have his Jedi Order anymore. He has nobody to serve. He has nothing to look forward to. There is no new hope at this point in Obi-Wan Kenobi's life. He's broken, and he's doing his friend's final wish, his request. He's like, okay, I'm going to go retrieve you, Leia, because, yeah, we can't have this, but whatever. You know, he's not doing it out of, you know, in preparation to what's to come, the rebellion and so forth. And I really like that part. He's walking around, he's brooding, he's dark. I love the action sequences there, how he retrieves Leia. But before he does that, he goes to this guy portrayed by Kumail Nanjiani, who I've never seen this actor's performances before. And he goes to this guy who is a Jedi con artist. I loved him. I instantaneously loved him. You could argue that he a little bit overacts with his performance. He does like all these eyebrow things and like movements and amps up his voice. But I actually liked it because it's very suitable to his character. He's a con artist. He's trying to play you. And then Obi-Wan obviously extracts all the necessary vital information from him and he goes after Leia. I enjoyed him a lot. And later on during the episode, I also liked the fact that he turns around because he almost feels like a small character from a Star Wars short story. We don't know his past. Don't assume that he's completely good or completely bad guy. He could be like chaotic good if we go like by Dungeons and Dragons character standards, right? Character models. That he cons the family in the beginning, but then at the same time, he says, no, but I still provided them safe passage off planet because at the end of the day, he's sort of he's looking after himself, but he's also making sure that that family is not harmed. And later on, when he catches up to Leia and Obi-Wan Kenobi says, no, you want to get out of this planet? This is the only safe route. I believed him because maybe he's the type of character who is forced to live at the lowest bottom level of this planet Dayu, and he has no other choice, but he has to fend for himself basically. But in the heart of hearts, he's still like, no, I have to stand up for this. I have to do what's right. So I was sold on him. He was an enjoyable part of the show that I really liked. And then, of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi rescues Leia. I enjoyed the tiny bit of martial arts that we got there. Almost reminded me of a micro version of Daredevil show famous hallway scene, right? We see actually Obi-Wan Kenobi doing like twisting arms and Aikido, flipping people over and like fighting them with his hands. I'm like, okay, cool. And you sort of get a feeling that he's not tapping into the Force. He actually has to rely on his physical strength. And I loved the Kenobi and Leia's dynamic. That was really strong. Once again, what's a little bit grating and upsetting for me to see is when a part of an episode is so strong and so good that it doesn't connect with other parts that I dislike. You see where I'm going with this? It's uneven. That is the most persistently annoying thing that I have about all live action Star Wars so far, because all of the animated shows are on point. Everything builds slowly and effectively to a point where they maximize that tension. Here, I have to like compartmentalize and I say, okay, the Leia and Obi-Wan Kenobi scene is nice. And she says, well, you can't even lift me up. You're not a true Jedi. He is not willing to do that because he's not channeling the Force yet. I was like, okay, that little nuance. But once again, everything that the Inquisitors are doing and Reva, I'm not feeling it. She's not intimidating. She's not scary. She doesn't feel like a villain there. Her whole going psychotic thing, and she's trying to, no, I'm going to get what is owed to me. I'm not convinced that she's a villain, and it's not the performance. It's just the way that it's delivered. It's the directing. It's so many micro management, like detailed things out there. They just performance. It doesn't come through. It doesn't work for me. And then we get to the chase scene and that obligatory parkour. It's so 2010-ish. I'm like, come on. When B-13, the French movie, came out, I'm like, we're past that point. You think that's what thrills fans? Like Inquisitor doing backflips off the walls, and even to a point where Obi-Wan Kenobi stops already to have a little conversation with Leia, and she's still jumping around. I'm like, all right, this is not what I'm personally looking for. If somebody finds it cool and interesting, please, guys, let me know. Maybe I'm not seeing something. I always come into it not because I love Star Wars glowing laser swords and TIE fighters and X-Wings. I'm there to see a good story. I don't care what it's called. Star Wars, Stranger Things, Westworld, whatever it may be, Arcane, which I loved actually. I am there for a good story. It needs to be good story first, and then good Star Wars second. So after that chase scene, Leia ends up in a predicament where she forces Obi-Wan Kenobi to tap and channel his Force because she's falling into her death. I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen here? And he taps into his Force, sort of like Luke does in Episode 8, and he like embraces it again. And of course, the show ends up with this very, very cryptic scene where he's like, Anakin is alive? Once again, you have a scene where I don't understand how two Force-sensitive Inquisitors are standing there, and the Grand Inquisitor clearly can sense Kenobi, and this is the time where you're going to try to resolve your personal beef with another Inquisitor? Don't you have higher-ups that you are answerable to? Isn't there any sort of discipline here? Even though we understand that this is how Sith operate. One betrays the other because he wants to get a favor with the master. I get that idea. The rule of two, I read my Bane books back in the day when they came out. It just doesn't work here. You can always settle your beef later. I just don't feel that it's good writing. It's good storytelling. It's not. Obi-Wan is standing there behind the crate. He's the sole purpose of your motivation. This is what the show is about. They need to get Kenobi. And instead of giving us something where Kenobi either fights both of them or something happens there, it's a very anticlimactic. It's like she just stabs him. It's like, okay, all right. And then they escape. Okay. So what are I think you could kind of deduce what are my biggest gripes with the show so far. I am reliving my Star Wars clone decade. How I was going and experiencing Star Wars prequels in theater. The first one was very disappointing. Part 2 was more enjoyable. I liked Part 2. I liked Attack of the Clones. So I came out of theaters, so like, okay, I love the romance. I love the action sequence and so forth. And Part 3, obviously the best one. I came out of theaters and said, okay, this is the closest I'm going to get to my original trilogy. This movie is actually good. I still have a couple of problems. You get the idea. Same with Kenobi show. The positives far outweighed the negatives. But it's just very frustrating when you have, once again, a single vision behind it, a single director, a single writer, one team working there, but it still feels like it does not represent that film school of George Lucas and James Cameron and Steven Spielberg of the 80s, where they knew how to work with children and get the performances out of them, which are phenomenal. Go back and rewatch E.T. I dare you guys. The acting is phenomenal. And even today with Stranger Things season 1, the way that you see the children act there, come on, like you could have done better a little bit there. In terms of action, you could have done a little bit better. But again, I'm not going to be jaded about it. I'm not going to be pissed. So far, should I score this or not? I'm not going to probably score it, but it sits somewhere 7-ish out of 10. Maybe a very, very generous 8. And of course, I will revise my opinion when the whole thing comes out and we get to see the show in retrospect and we get to podcast about it a month from now, a year from now. I constantly revise my opinion, and this is how I arrived to enjoying prequel content through books, comic books, the Clone Wars show, and even the movies themselves as I've been watching them in preparation for the show. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Please drop a comment. Let me know in the section below what you agree with, what you disagree with, what were your favorite parts. I'd love to read and respond to all of it. And I'll see you guys next time when I review part 3. Take care.